Valorant is a game which offers a lot of customization to its players through its use of settings, sensitivity, crosshair, and keybinds. Properly adjusting these settings will not only allow you to be more comfortable while playing, but also allow you to play at your best. So today I'll be giving you a guide on how to find the best Valorant keybinds for you. So I wanted to put in a quick disclaimer here, and throughout this video you'll be seeing the keybinds that I personally use. Now my goal here is not for you guys to directly copy the keybinds that I use, because at the end of the day keybinds are comfort. What works for me might not work for you, but my goal with this video is to give you the underlying thought process and ideas that I have when I go about adjusting and creating new keybinds. And if you keep these things in the back of your head when you're making keybinds, you can go about it in a lot more logical way that will make a lot more sense and will work best for you. So that's something I just wanted to quickly say before we get into the video, and let's get right into it. Alright, so starting out with the basics, we can go to our controls, and under our movement keybinds, everything here is pretty much standard. 90% of all players pretty much run the same thing when it comes to movement keybinds. These are tried, true, and tested, and unless you're TSM Myth, this is going to be pretty standard for most players. So for your movement keys, WASD, pretty standard. Default movement mode, you should probably keep that at run, as you typically run more in game, so it just makes sense that that would be your default over walking. Keep it on left shift, pretty standard. Toggle walk, I prefer that off, but I know there are some people who actually prefer their toggle to be on walk so that they don't have to hold down their shift, they can just tap it, which is perfectly fine, so you can try both of those out. For jump, I have this double bound to spacebar and mouse wheel down, and basically the reason you want to do this is because mouse wheel is better for having more fluid, faster movement while using bunny hopping. And if you want to learn more about that, I made an entire video about that I will have linked in the top right. But basically you want to have mouse wheel down as jump, definitely. And the reason why I keep it double bounded on spacebar and mouse wheel down is so that if I'm specifically playing a character like Jet, then I also want to have my spacebar to glide, because if I only have mouse wheel down as my jump and I'm playing Jet, then I can't glide in the air without having spacebar. So that's why I keep this specifically double bounded. Crouch, I'll keep that just as my left control. Toggle crouch, once again I keep the toggle off. Fly up and down, this is for your Silva drone, just spacebar, left control, pretty standard. Then when we move over to equipment, fire, alternate fire, left mouse button, right mouse button. Toggle zoom level, I don't have this bounded to anything because I will talk about that right now. But basically, aim down sights for weapons, I keep that on hold, and that's just what I use for pretty much FPS game. I prefer hold over toggle when it comes to aiming down sights. I feel like I'm a lot faster, and typically you don't hold a lot of angles using your ADS when using like a Phantom or a Vandal. You typically just hip fire, so you won't even be using ADS that much. But when it comes to sniper rifle, which is basically your operator and your marshal, I definitely prefer that on toggle, and that's because when you're holding down a sightline with an operator or a marshal, you're typically gonna be holding down that sightline for 20, 30, 40 seconds at times. So if you're gonna be holding down a sightline for that long, I would rather just click it and not have to be holding the key for that long. So when it comes to sniper rifles, I definitely prefer it on toggle. And since I have it on toggle, your operator zoom level, I have that on cycle. So that means if I press right click, I scope in. If I press right click again, I scope in further, and then again, then it just comes off. But if you have your sniper rifle aim on hold, then you have to set another keybind for toggling the different zoom levels, which would go back to here, toggle zoom level. But because I have it on toggle, this does not need to be bound to anything. So just keep that in mind. If you have your sniper rifle aim on hold, you need to keep this toggled, right, on a different keybind. Now, when it comes to auto re-enter scope, I like to keep that off personally, because that just means after you take an op shot, then you will go back into your scope. But a lot of times after an op shot, you don't want to scope immediately. Maybe you want to take the shot, then you pull your knife out and you move away off the angle in case the enemy repeats you or something like that. So I just rather keep that on off. Reload, have it on R, pretty standard. When it comes to selecting my weapons, I have it 1, 2, 3, and my spike on 4, which is pretty standard. But I also keep for my secondary weapon, which is your pistol, I also do mouse wheel up, which I honestly find a lot more comfortable and a lot more fast than clicking the 2 key with my middle finger. So I prefer to do that because a lot of times when I'm trying to pull out my pistol, if I have to press 2 with my middle finger, that means I can't be pressing W. That means I can't be moving forward when pulling out my pistol, which is something I don't like. So I keep that toggled on mouse wheel up, right? So, but I still keep it on 2 as well, just in case I want to use 2 or whatever. It's not the biggest deal, right? Yeah, so 1, 2, 3 is pretty standard for your weapons, but you'll see certain pro players like Dapper from Sentinels, he actually uses all his mouse buttons for his weapons. So I think he has his knife on his mouse 5, his secondary on mouse 3, and I think he would have like his melee on scroll wheel up or something to that effect. So basically swapping between all his weapons is on his mouse, which I don't think is the worst idea, because I think for a lot of keybinds, the best way to go about making keybinds is, you know, to have full range of motion while being able to equip your weapons and use your abilities. So any sort of keybinds that takes less off of your left hand so that you can be using WASD as much as possible, I think is a good idea and something you definitely can experiment with. Cycle to next weapon, I have those completely turned off. Normally what some people would have it to is your scroll wheel to cycle between your weapons, which is never a good idea because it's easy to, I don't know, over cycle to the wrong weapon. You can scroll upwards and instead of going to your pistol, you go to your knife because you scrolled too far forwards. So I'd rather just keep those off and have specific keys for each of the weapons. When it comes to drop equip weapon, I just keep that on my G key. You can have that on whatever you want. It's not really a big deal. Inspect weapon, you can put that on whatever. Use object, I have on E. And I ran into an issue before where I had use object on E and I believe plant and defuse also on E. Basically that means whenever I wanted to plant the bomb, I would press E, but that also meant that since I also had it on use object, when I would go up a rope, that also means I would use E. Now the weird issue I had was specifically on a map like Icebox, if they plant the bomb under the rope on A site, for example, if you try to defuse the bomb, there have been weird times where I actually go up the rope instead of starting to defuse the bomb because I have both actions bound to the same keybind. So I don't do that anymore because of that very weird niche specific problem. So now I just have use object on E and use spike plant defuse on 4, which is the same key I use to equip my spike. Now we come to abilities. So for this, I like to use my mouse buttons, and pretty much every modern gaming mouse these days will have at least 2 mouse buttons on them. So I definitely like to use that for my E and my Q ability, the default E and Q abilities, which for Sova, my mouse button 5 is my recon dart and my mouse button 4 is my shock dart. Now I like to use my mouse buttons over the standard like E and Q because that means that my fingers can stay on WASD while I'm using my abilities, which makes me a lot more fluid. It allows me to have full range of motion while I'm using my abilities. So I can be moving in absolutely any direction and pull out my Sova dart at the same time. If I have it on E, that means I can't be moving to the right and pull out my dart at the same time. I would have to move, pull it out, and then keep moving. And while you might say, well, you'll only be stopped for, you know, a millisecond, a half second. Sometimes that millisecond, that half second can mean the difference between, you know, getting a kill, not getting a kill, living or dying. So I just like to have as much range of motion when using any of my abilities. So for me, that means keeping my 2 main abilities on my mouse buttons. Then when it comes to my ability 3, which would for Sova would be my drone, that I just keep it on C. My ultimate ability, I rather have that on F than the default X. That feels a lot faster and more natural for me. Then I just have spray on X, and you can really put that on anything. It doesn't really matter that much. Then when we move over to communication, the only thing that's really important here is what you have your keys for your push to talk for team and party. I keep that on V and M. You can put that on whatever key feels comfortable for you. Personally, I use party chat way less than I use team voice chat. So just find something that's easy to click, that you can keep moving, you can, isn't a hassle to click because you want to be using your voice comms a lot, right? And for pings, I use the P key, but I don't actually use the P key. The P key is actually binded onto the left click of my mouse scroll wheel. And I know that sounds weird, but if you have a mouse that I do, which is the Logitech G903, you can actually put keybinds on the scroll wheel, click left or right, which is very useful. So I can click my scroll wheel to the left and I can just ping whatever. I find it super easy, super useful. If you don't have a mouse like this, then obviously you can do middle mouse click. I know a lot of people like to do that for their pings, so that's just a quick little adjustment that you can do. Then when it comes to interface, nothing here is pretty special. I have my armory on the Z key. I have my open map hold on my tilde key. I have my scoreboard, which is your tab. And that's pretty much it. I think everything else is pretty standard. Toggle menus, escape, combat report, end. And that is pretty much it for my keybinds. Well, that's pretty much it for this guide, guys. If you watched the entire video and you liked what you saw, be sure to drop a like on the video. If something wasn't clear or you want further explanation on anything, any question, don't be scared to put a comment down below and I will try my best to my ability to answer every question that I see. And if you like this type of content, guys, consider subscribing for more like that. It really does help out the channel. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.